Brenner is recognized for his questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Holder, I deeply appreciate your coming here to talk largely about Fast and Furious. And the way this has been handled within the Justice Department, I think, has put the Justice Department as an institution under a cloud that has not been exceeded since the infamous COINTELPRO scandal of the 1970s. And you're at the top of the Justice Department. Do you think the buck stops with you?
I'm ultimately responsible for all of the actions that occur within the department. But I think as you look at what happened with regard to Fast and Furious and try to decide what kind of performance I have done in this regard, I think you have to look at what happened, what I did once I learned of these matters.
Well, that's a question of when you learned it, because there have been inconsistent submissions to Congress. You yourself testified that you'd only heard about it a few weeks earlier, and then in November you said it probably was a few months. As late as October 7th, in response to allegations that you lied on May 3rd, you wrote to Congress, your statements on Fast and Furious have been, quote, truthful and consistent. And then your underlings on February 4th, Assistant AG Ronald Weich responded to Senator Grassley denying that the ATF had walked guns, and that letter ended up being withdrawn. As Mr. Issa has said, lying to Congress is a federal felony. I don't want to say that you have committed a felony, Mr. Attorney General, but obviously there have been statements so misleading that a letter had to be withdrawn. I think that some heads should roll, and I do agree with Senator Grassley that Assistant Attorney General for the Criminal Division, Lanny Breuer, should be fired. And I know that that decision is not yours, but it is the President's. But I think that merely getting the head of the ATF director at the time is not sufficient, since it's obvious that there was knowledge within the Justice Department. What are you going to do to clean up this mess?
Well, first let me make something very clear. And in response to an assertion that you made or hinted at, nobody in the Justice Department has lied.
Why was the letter withdrawn?
The letter was withdrawn because there's information in there that was inaccurate. The Justice Department letter of February.
Okay, well, tell me what's the difference between lying and misleading Congress in this context?
Well, if you want to have this legal conversation, it all has to do with your state of mind and whether or not you had the requisite intent to come up with something that can be considered perjury or a lie. The information that was provided in that February 4th letter was gleaned by the people who drafted the letter after they interacted with people who they thought were in the best position to have the information.
Okay. Now the wagons down the street are in a pretty tight circle, Mr. Attorney General. The American people need the truth. They haven't gotten the truth from what has been coming out of the Justice Department in the last year, and they were relying on Congress to get the truth. Now, you're here today, and again, I appreciate your being here today as a way to get the truth. But the answers that you have given so far are basically saying, well, gee, somebody else did it. And, there is really no responsibility within the Justice Department. The thing is that if we don't get to the bottom of this, and that requires your assistance on that, there is only one alternative that Congress has, and it's called impeachment, where our subpoena powers are plenary, and there can't be any type of illegal immunity or privilege that can be asserted on that. Now, I've done more impeachments than anybody else in the history of the country. It is an expensive and messy affair, and I don't want to go this far. But if we keep on getting pushed down the road and the can keeps on getting kicked and we don't get closure to this, what is Congress to do so that we don't spend all of our time in court arguing privilege, which is not a way to get at the truth?
Well, the Justice Department has released facts, and I think that's what we need to focus on, facts. With regard to the creation of the February 4th letter, I made the determination that we would release things that a Justice Department has never, ever released before. Core deliberative material about how that letter was put together, information that clearly could have been withheld, and it has always been withheld by my predecessors, and I expect by my successors as well. Getting to the bottom of this is something that we all want to do. The Inspector General, pursuant to my request, is conducting an investigation of this matter, and I suspect we'll have a great many more answers than we presently do. I don't have the ability to do a top-to-bottom investigation at this point out of deference to the investigation that is being done by the Inspector General. That does not, however, preclude me from taking action that I think appropriate based on information that comes to my attention, in spite of the fact that the Inspector General has an ongoing investigation.
Well, you won't have an independent counsel, and we end up having the Justice Department investigating itself in the absence of an independent counsel. And, you know, having gone through interminable hearings on COINTELPRO, with all due respect, Mr. Attorney General, you got to get this done much more quickly than plugging the holes that COINTELPRO ended up showing existed in the department at that time, and I yield back.
Well, Chairman, I have a parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Sensenbrenner.
A parliamentary inquiry.
For what reason does the gentlewoman from Texas seek to be...
I seek clarification. The gentleman in his questioning indicated impeachment. I was not sure which official or which person he was speaking of in terms of
The
impeachment.
gentleman from Wisconsin was referring to the fact that while he was chairman of this committee, he oversaw the impeachment process.
His words were, is the Parliament, continue my inquiry, the statement that the only one alternative is impeachment. I'm trying to determine.
That is not a parliamentary inquiry. The gentleman from California, Mr. Berman, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And
clarification.
Thank you, Mr.